I had to lay down in the backseat of the car when we went outside of our immediate area to go through the Caucasian areas to get to the mall, like North Riverside. We couldn't just drive out, have fun, play the radio. Little guy like me, I'm not that old, you guys, I'm just 50. 52 to be exact. But I'm not that old. And had it not been for people like Dr. King making an impact on this country, on this world, can you imagine that you may not be sitting here today? Can you guys imagine that? Can anybody in this room imagine that? That you may not be sitting here today. You may not be talking about being in the broadcast field because at that time, there were no African Americans in broadcast. There were none of us behind the camera. There were none of us holding a mic interviewing people. You didn't see that because that wasn't going on during that time. How fortunate we are that people like Dr. King became a voice for those of us who didn't have a voice. And that's what public speaking is about for people like myself, is having a voice for people who don't have a voice. And I certainly hope that you guys take this to that serious heart, that you know that in the field that you're going into that deals with media and broadcasting, that you're helping people hear a voice that may sound close enough to them that they get encouraged and they get a sense of feeling about the message that's being shared maybe by you, that's being filmed by you, that's being portrayed by you in some way, that you're giving some people encouragement that may look like you and don't have to have the same skin tone. That may sound like you, that don't have to be the same age. That may be dealing with some of the things that you have to deal with in your home environment. Because that's what most of this came from, was Dr. King's home environment that this began to build. What you saw today was because of a bus boycott. That's what civil rights came from, was because of a bus boycott that happened where a woman was told to give up her seat and go to the back of a bus. That's where our movement began. And Dr. King took on a movement, and he was just a preacher out of a college that he graduated from, Morehouse College in Atlanta, Georgia. And he started an organization called SCLC, Southern Christian Leadership Conference. And he was called to ask to be involved with helping to revolt against people being sent to the back of a bus. And he took on that challenge and won in Alabama at a time where people would look you in the face and call you boy and feel no harm or disgrace about doing it. Folks, we are in a very celebrated time that we can go anytime, go anywhere we like to go, and we can do almost anything we like to do in terms of careers. And that's a celebration of life. But when parents in that day and time, and even in the day and time where I grew up, we had to be very specific and very direct about where we wanted to go and what we wanted to do when we left home. I'll tell you that my mother's grandfather was accosted because he looked at a white woman wrong when he was coming home from the field. And what was called the night riders came to my grandmother's house to put him in his place. And that was the last time he was seen by our family. He left the house running from the back door. My mother was there. My grandmother, her mother, was there at the house. And they've not seen him since. They don't know if he was hanged. They don't know if he was drowned, but he was never to return home. Can you imagine that? Can you imagine that you just say something, pardon me, and somebody takes it the wrong way, and then it turns into something else? And people come to your house and say that I'm going to lynch you, I'm going to take your life because you've done an injustice to somebody you shouldn't have said something to or you shouldn't have spoke to. And they carry you away. And all your family know is death usually follows you going away. It normally follows when somebody's taken from their home. How important is a speech like this to a person like myself, it made the difference, the world of difference in my life. I'm a young guy from the west side, as I said, and went to Westinghouse High School and was able to get a college scholarship to play football, and went away to the East Coast and had a chance to play football and get a college education because of that. Was able to come back to Chicago and work and get a job and go into a political lifestyle that I can make decisions for everybody in this room. I make decisions on a daily basis that affect your lives. How do I do that? Does anybody know what county government does? Anybody in this room have an idea what county government does? Say it again? Well, usually, she said taxes. We are the collectors of taxes. We collect your county taxes of your real estate properties, your sales tax when you make a purchase. We are the collectors of any type of tax that is paid, and we distribute those taxes out to different bodies of government. But I also make laws. I have the right to make laws. And I try to do smart laws. And I have voted to support a law not to arrest everybody that gets caught with marijuana that's not trying to distribute it. So if you get caught with a small amount of grams of marijuana, I don't want you to have to go sit in a jail cell because of that, because it's for personal use. Generally, and I don't want you walking around with it anyway. But again, it's generally minority individuals who are the ones who pay the highest price for things like that. So we made a law, and I supported that law, helped sponsor that law, to make sure that individuals who got caught with a small amount of marijuana can get a fine rather than go to jail. Because we crowd up our jails with so many people for insignificant things. Now, yes, they've probably broken the law because of a traffic ticket or something of that nature, and they have to go before a judge to do that. But why do you have to sit in jail for months at a time to have to do that? And so we're trying to reduce that time that people have to spend in jail because of some of the misdemeanor things that are coming before us at this time. We're trying to encourage our judges to make better decisions as well, because that's the one who actually puts the gavel down that sends you to the jail cell. And so we're trying to change some of the decision-making process that our judges have to go through in order to give people their time for the incident that they are being accused of. And again, it's only being accused of at this time because it has not gone before the court for the adjudication process to take place, and that you're being sentenced because of you've been convicted of something. So I get a chance to change some of those laws that our citizens get a chance to come before us. It would not happen unless people like Dr. King, or a person like Dr. King, was so impactful with what he said. And then what he did. You guys, the violence that we're dealing with, I know that he's so disappointed with what we see now today. The crime that we're committing against one another, and for the lack of any significant reasons. A man gets killed texting, checking on his child in a movie theater, in a safe place, not hurting anyone, checking on his child. Can you really imagine that that's worth pulling out a gun and hurting somebody and taking their life today? Dr. King would be totally disappointed at something like that. The fact that a sister, just yesterday, kills a younger sister, stabbed her 40 times. 14 years old kills an 11-year-old sister because she says she's a little disrespectful. And so it's not so much just about a community of African Americans and Hispanics and other ethnic groups. It's now raising the attention to all groups of people in our community, because what he wanted was equality for all people. He wanted us all to be able to stand side by side and lift the human race, and not just one group of individuals. It was about us all being able to be what he called equal and what is equal in our Constitution. It shouldn't be because of the color of your skin that you get treated in a different manner. And we know that it's still true today. So, what are you doing about it? What difference are you making? Let me ask you, what difference are you making? Anything. Just give me an idea. So you're keeping yourself clean so you don't have to be arrested. Makes a difference. And I thank you for that. Because the less of our young men who have to go in the system and go into the system, I think is a very positive thing, because I spend, here in Cook County alone, $670 a day for every juvenile that's locked up in our juvenile detention center. That amounts up to about $220,000 a year to house a kid under the age of 17 in our juvenile justice system. For an adult to go into our county jail system, it's $140 a day. Roughly about $85,000 a year is what we spend housing an adult, male or female, in our jail system. I'd rather not have to do that. I'd rather spend that money in better policies by making sure people get education and give them broader opportunities of life. Same thing that Dr. King spoke about is making sure that you have those opportunities at a decision time where you want to make those opportunities available to you and your families. That's what that civil rights speech was about, is giving opportunities to you, a community of people, a diverse community of people, to use each other to lend for equality. And I think that was the most positive speech that I've heard in my lifetime, coming out of a time of some real challenging things for me, because I spoke to my mom after the speech that I went to at the church, and she kind of felt bad. She went to see 12 Years a Slave, and she said she couldn't watch it because it really pictured her life. The role that I'm sharing right now as a county commissioner, my mother did it before I did, until I got elected. So I got elected as a second generation individual. My mother also served as president of the county board. So that means she was the #1 person in Cook County prior to her retiring. And this is a woman who worked in the cotton fields in Mississippi as a youth. She talked about that during that ride home, that up until the age of 13, she had to chop cotton to help the family earn their income. And my grandmother told her that that was the last year that she and her 4 other brothers and sisters were going to do that. And my grandmother got them evicted from the plantation that they were. It wasn't a plantation, but from the sharecropping home that they lived in, because my grandmother was not accepting the amount of cotton they were picking. She was being paid fairly for it. And so the sharecropper owner, the gentleman who owned the land, told my grandfather that they had to move. And that was the best thing to happen to their family. My grandmother was the first African-American woman to graduate from Delta State University in the South, in Cleveland, Mississippi. She became a school teacher. And before she passed, she had 3 master's degrees. Can you imagine that? A woman in that day and time going to get an education, college education, and then postgraduate education? And you just saw why. Because a gentleman named Dr. Martin Luther King spoke out against the injustices. So I want to say thank you to all of you for allowing an individual like me, who's had to deal with some of the issues of life that were called injustices, and continuing to deal with those things, but trying to make a day better for all of you, for all of us. Because it's so important that when you have a voice, that you use it in the proper fashion, that you let that freedom ring that he talked about. Most of the places he's talked about in Tennessee and Colorado, Allegheny Mountains in Pennsylvania, I've visited. I've been there. I've been to the White House 6 times. I've met President Obama. I served on 2 of his committees. I've met President Clinton. I've met President Bush. That's what I've done, is continue to stay engaged. And that's why I'm in the role that I am right now, because I'm an individual who won't let the injustices continue to hit us and we not address them in a proper fashion. So thank you, Mr. Natale, for allowing me to come say hello to your class and say a few things to them. And hopefully this day, I've encouraged you to be the next elected official, or to be the next cameraman behind our camera in our boardroom, or to be that voice who interviews me or interviews another elected official so you can understand why it's so important for you to do it the right way. So thank you all. Appreciate it.